So this is the day that the left has been waiting for, right? James Comey, the fired FBI guy, was going to get behind, they were going to get behind the stand in front of the Senate, and he was going to testify, and the Trump administration was going to be over, shattered by scandal. Trump weeping in his Oval Office before they came. The police came and just lifted him out and took him away. Not so much. Of course, we kind of knew this yesterday. He released an opening statement that he didn't actually make in the Intel hearing room, but he released a statement basically saying there are certain things. One thing that the mainstream media got right, and this is because now we know that Comey himself arranged for this to be leaked to the newspaper, was that Comey did take a memo saying that Donald Trump had asked him for certain things. He asked him for loyalty. He asked him to go easy on Michael Flynn, saying Michael Flynn was a good guy. Michael Flynn had already been fired. And basically this is, before he had even taken office. And he was just saying, I hope you can let this go. He didn't direct him to let it go. And then I think he said it again a week or so into his presidency. And but the thing that the mainstream media got wrong, what was the third thing he asked for? He asked for, this was the big thing, I think, in Trump's mind. He asked for Comey to go out and make a statement that he was not under investigation. And this was what the mainstream media got wrong, of course, was that Trump said three times, the FBI director Comey told him that he was not under any investigation. And this turned out to be true. CNN reported it wasn't true. I think the Washington Post reported it wasn't true. All their great anonymous sources telling other anonymous sources and then calling on the phone and reading memos over the phone. All this stuff turned out not to be true. Trump was right. Comey told him he was not under investigation. And you can, think back, remember, this was right after the mainstream media, who is the Democrat Party, lost the election, and they went insane. And it was all because it had nothing to do with Hillary Clinton being a corrupt, terrible candidate, nothing to do with that, nothing to do with a country sick and tired of Barack Obama's meaningless, harmful policies, nothing to do with any of that. It all had to do with the Russians. It was all about the Russian spies. And they just hammered Trump with this collusion thing. There was a story in the New York Times about how Trump's campaign people were constantly in contact with Russia. Comey has now testified that was largely untrue, that the New York Times didn't know what they were talking about. So all of that stuff has gone by the boards. But this was just the stuff, it was driving Trump insane. And Trump wanted Comey to come out, as he had for Hillary Clinton, come out and say, you are not under investigation. So here's the big thing. So Comey sits down for his testimony today, and all of Washington and all of the left wing is waiting on tenterhooks. They've been waiting for weeks now for Comey to dump Trump under the truck and say he tried to obstruct justice. Not so much. Play clip number 2, which basically put an end to the scandal.
Director Comey, did the president at any time ask you to stop the FBI investigation into Russian involvement in the 2016 U.S. elections?
Not to my understanding, no.
Did any individual working for this administration, including the Justice Department, ask you to stop the Russian investigation?
No.
Director, when the president requested that you, and I quote, let Flynn go, General Flynn had an unreported contact with the Russians, which is an offense. And if press accounts are right, there might have been discrepancies between facts and his FBI testimony. In your estimation, was General Flynn at that time in serious legal jeopardy? And in addition to that, do you sense that the president was trying to obstruct justice or just seek for a way for Mike Flynn to save face, given he had already been fired?
Well, General Flynn at that point in time was in legal jeopardy. There was an open FBI criminal investigation of his statements in connection with the Russian contacts and the contacts themselves. And so that was my assessment at the time. I don't think it's for me to say whether the conversation I had with the president was an effort to obstruct. I took it as a very disturbing thing, very concerning, but that's a conclusion I'm sure the special counsel will work towards to try and understand what the intention was there and whether that's an offense.
Now, this, remember, is the same guy, Comey, who declared that Hillary Clinton should not be prosecuted, something that was none of his business. He declared that Hillary Clinton should not be prosecuted because she had no intent to share classified material, even though she did share classified material, expose classified material. So he can pronounce on Hillary Clinton's thinking, but he couldn't pronounce on Donald Trump's thinking. Doesn't really matter. Look, for the next few days, as I told you yesterday, for the next few days, the left is going to scream and yell, but this basically bursts their balloon. He said that Donald Trump was not under investigation. He said it several times. He said it today again. Donald Trump was not under any criminal or intelligence investigation. He was not implicated at all. He didn't do anything. He says that the special counsel can figure out whether he was trying to obstruct justice. At one point, he said, I took this as an order. But as Eric Trump, as Trump's son, tweeted today, he said, when my father orders you to do something, you know you've been ordered. I don't think any of us could question whether or not this is true. You know, I just want to give my take on this right away before we have to break. We're going to have to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube. But before I do, I just want to give my take on this because it's very rare that Chris Christie speaks my mind. But yesterday after the show, I walked over to our new digs, the new studio that's under construction, and there was Michael Knowles. And don't think that he was doing any construction work, because the day that Michael Knowles does any work whatsoever will be a different day than this one. But anyway, he read me basically the statement. And everybody was talking at once and everybody was commenting, and I didn't say anything, but my reaction was almost exactly what Chris Christie's was. Here's Chris Christie commenting on Donald Trump's relations and discussions with Comey.
Listen, what people don't understand is that they elected an outsider president. Mm-hmm. They elected someone who had never been inside government and, quite frankly, didn't spend a lot of time interacting with government except at the local level. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of the tradition of these agencies is not something that he's ever been steeped in. So, I think over the course of time, and we could talk about different examples, what you're seeing is a president who is now very publicly learning about the way people react to what he considers to be normal New York City conversation.
Normal New York City conversation. That was exactly what I thought. See, Trump is so used as a construction guy to dealing with New York City Democrats. He didn't realize that you have to be subtle about your corruption in Washington, D.C. Because if you're a New York City Democrat, you don't have to be subtle because there's no Republican Party. So he just figured everyone was openly corrupt. All the officials were openly corrupt the way they are in New York. This is a case of a blundering New York non-politician maneuvering with a very, very slick, inside, stiletto wielding political operative in James Comey. That's what this is. This is a very, I don't mean to impugn Comey, because I think there's been on the right, there's been a lot of what a terrible, terrible guy he is. I don't think he's a terrible guy. He's a political operative. You don't get as high up in the government as he did without being a political operative. He's a very subtle, clever, self-aware political operative. Trump is a blundering New York guy used to working in a place where people talk a lot more bluntly than they do in the rest of the country. I've had this experience with Trump a number of times as a New Yorker where I thought, yeah, that's kind of what I would say too, where the rest of the country goes insane. We're going to